Welcome to Muslim Apologetics Australia. Let's expose again the hypocrisy of secular liberalism. So, the sentiments we always hear as Muslims that the West is for progression, for integration, for liberal values, for freedom of thought, freedom of religion, rights to LGBTIQ, and how we're progressed and we value human rights and how we should uphold those values. And so these Westerners are all for liberal values and human rights, and we're humanists. But it's all good. It's all good. It's all about promoting that when they're in the majority. When they're in the majority and Muslims are in the minority, and Muslims aren't coming there wearing their burqas and wearing their niqabs and wearing their hijab, then they're all for liberal values. And, you can have your mosque, just don't, display your religion. You can go worship at your mosque, that's fine. Keep your religion to yourself in your home. But then, when the Muslim populations start growing in the West and people are getting more conservative, where we're seeing more and more burqas and more hijabs in the public, then suddenly what happens is all of these secular liberal values that they so heavily promote, they go against it. So it's the Westerners who are extremely hypocritical, where they constantly abuse Muslim nations. You don't give rights to Christians. You don't give rights to ex-Muslims and atheists. You don't give them voices. You don't give them freedom of their religion and their way of life. You put all these bans and restrictions, and, you have all these blasphemy laws and all these restrictions against, your non-Muslim minorities. But then, folks, when the Muslims start growing in the West, then comes all of these slogans. We need to ban Muslims. We need to stop Islam. We need to stop Muslim immigration into the West. So people like, in France, we're having these elections, Emmanuel Macron, full Islamophobe. And then you have Marine Le Pen, where she lost, her previous elections because, she was a bit too harsh against Muslims, saying, ban Muslims. But now she's toned it down a bit. So basically, because, the Westerners would love the ban of Muslims, but, it's a bit too hard to swallow because they're trying to hold on to their secular liberal values, right? To say, no, we believe in human rights. And so she really didn't get far. But she came back and now she's saying, she's not really now against Muslim immigration, but what she is now against is the hijab. She wants to ban the hijab and things like that. So, and now she's getting public support again. And so that's what it's about. Yes, we will accept Muslims to live amongst us, but your Islam, we don't want you to promote that. If you want to look secular, you want to look Western, if you want to dress like us, look like us, yeah, you can fit in, no problem, but we will only accept you that way. But if you choose to wear your Islamic clothing and then you want to, endorse halal foods and things like, no, we're going to start putting restrictions because we don't want to Islamicize our nation. But hang on a minute, what happened to freedom of religion? What happened to all those ideals of human rights and allowing people to freely practice their religion? And so they go from saying, we believe in freedom of rights, freedom of religion, of liberal values, and we uphold human rights. People can freely practice what they want. They go from that. And then what happens, folks, when the Muslims start growing and they're becoming more present in the face of non-Muslims, and you see people walking around with hijabs and niqabs and things like that, and people who are practicing their religion, and Islam is spreading in France, then they go to from secular liberal human rights values to upholding human rights, then they then go to, oh, no, we can't do that anymore, because when we do that, then Islam is spreading in France and it's becoming more popular and more, people walking around with hijabs and niqabs, and we can't have that. So now it becomes, we need to preserve our Western culture. We need to preserve and uphold our identity, because our French identity is not the hijab or niqab. Hijab and niqab belongs in the Middle East. Therefore, we need to uphold, and if we don't uphold our culture and our cultural values, then Islam is going to take over our culture, even though, Muslims are a minority. But no, we can't have French converting. We can't have people converting to Islam. We can't have these religious people promoting their Islam with their hijabs and their niqabs in our society, because it's diminishing our French culture, our identity. So these hypocrites are now using the same arguments that Muslims have been using in those Muslim countries. We need to stamp out Christianity or Judaism or Buddhism and temple worship and idol worship. We need to stamp all this out because we need to hang on to our Islamic preservation, our identity, our culture, our belief system. But if we have all these Christians coming into Saudi Arabia, they're going to bring their churches and they're going to erect them, and it's going to take over our Islamic identity. You notice where I'm going here. It's going to the same path. So they were accusing Muslims for doing the wrong thing, for being against human rights and human values and religious rights. And they were tarnishing Muslim nations for so many years, calling them backwards and unprogressed and not enlightened and not for human rights. And now what we are seeing, folks, is that when Islam is growing in their nations, they then also forget all these secular liberal values and human rights. They now want to preserve their Western identity. And guys, this isn't a double standard from the Muslim side. Yes, in Islam we give religious rights and religious freedoms, but there are certain boundaries. This, for example, only happens for primarily Jews and Christians, and we don't, under Islamic Sharia law, they can't have their churches higher than ours, and in certain aspects they can't display their crosses, and in certain aspects you can't have them promoting their Christianity or their Buddhism or their Hinduism on, Islamic State TV and things like this. And we're not ashamed of this because we don't believe in secular liberal values. We believe the censorship against the LGBTI who want to come out and promote their fahisha. No, we don't allow this. And we have always said that. So we're not hypocritical because we've been against that. Of course, we're not secular liberal Muslims. Yes, there are secular liberal Muslims who are sellouts, who are trying to imitate the West. But we're not like that. If you go to conservative Islam, you'll see even through the scholarship, even through the Khilafah, if you look at all of their lives and how non-Muslims lived under Muslim, you will see that, yes, there were rights given, but there were certain rights given. Not all rights were given. And again, we're not ashamed of that. We know that the way to preserve your religion, the way to preserve your culture is by objecting and promoting less of other religions that call to misguidance. Islam believes in forbidding the evil. So we've always held that value, and we've been criticized for that. We've been constantly abused and criticized for that. And now what we're seeing is the chickens have finally come home to roost, because all this criticism, all this, you're barbaric, you're against human rights and freedom of thought and freedom to, express and all these other faiths. And now what we're seeing is they now see the effects of allowing other religions to freely prosper, and now they're trying to stamp it out. Right? Because they're seeing that there's no other way of stopping it. So they're now against the very values that they so strongly try to promote to the world about secular liberal values and human rights. No, that's only good if Islam isn't growing. That sentiment is only good if Islam. But now that Islam is growing in the West, no, we can't believe in those beliefs anymore, even though we will just claim we believe in it, even though we'll pretend we'll believe in it, but when shit hits the fan, we will deny all those rights just to uphold our culture and our values. What a bunch of hypocrites.